Hey everybody, so this is going to be a little spoiler section for Companion, and I'm going to assume you've seen Companion. If you haven't, this isn't going to be really a review other than to say I quite like the movie. I think it goes above and beyond really what it needs to do to be just an entertaining movie. It does that on its own right, but it also has some extra levels, which I think are kind of cool. So I have a short review. You can go check that out if you want to just get a spoiler-free version of the review. But let's just suffice it to say it is a good movie, in my opinion. Worth seeing in the theater, and actually a pretty good date movie, too. You can get some conversations going, but you'll have a good time. All right. So, what are the spoilers in this movie? First of all, it's kind of not even a spoiler because they've really, in a lot of the marketing, they've pretty much given away the idea that Iris, played by Sophie Thatcher, Iris is a robot. Okay, so the question would be like, well, if you give that away, is it going to ruin the movie? I would say no, because that is something revealed within the first, what is it, 20 minutes maybe of the movie. So you know she's a robot pretty quick. So the question is, and really the subject of this movie is, what does it mean in this world that they present us, the slightly futuristic world, to be a robot? In a lot of ways, it's kind of doing a pretty neat trick in this movie. First of all, make an entertaining movie where, it's got the thrilling, actiony sort of stuff where you are kind of asked, and really they succeed in doing this, but you are asked to identify and sympathize with AI. And AI is the big bugaboo these days, right? AI is the enemy. And in a lot of ways, AI is a threat to careers and jobs and just creativity and all this kind of stuff. And here it's saying, well, if AI becomes self aware, which this movie is all about, the AI literally becoming self aware, um, does it then become an entity of its own? Does it become a human being? And this has been played with a lot of times in various movies. AI would be one of the most obvious examples. There's lots of movies where the self-awareness and the entityness of the AI becomes the subject and the sympathetic character. Um, Ex Machina would be another example of one that kind of comes to mind that's very relatable. Usually, they're not put in such a broadly entertaining kind of a format as you get here with Companion. What makes it even more interesting is not only are we supposed to that the basic sympathetic character is the AI character, but essentially this is kind of played out as a reverse slasher movie in a lot of ways, in the sense that Iris is the killer. Iris essentially causes the death of just about every character in this movie. And but you're sympathizing with it, like it's justifiable, except for maybe the very first guy, the Russian dude, who's also an a-hole in his own right. He probably didn't necessarily deserve to die for that particular moment, but well, I don't know. He's assaulting her, and even though he considers her a robot that's to be owned and used as seen fit, as we come to discover, that's not acceptable. So he probably did deserve to die. Whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to justify that. That's not really the point of this. All right. So what are some of the cool things this movie does? First of all, he gives you the meet cute right out of the gate, and you are immediately drawn into the wow, this is a real fantasy version of the world where this kind of idyllic meet cute happens. And even not right out of the gate, you're kind of wondering, is this supposed to be real? And I feel like it's a big nod to Stepford Wives, once again, where Stepford Wives was identifying with the woman who the creepy dudes wanted to murder and replace with a robot. Here, you are identifying with one of the Stepford wives, who is the replacement, and her plight. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to do. Um, the other really interesting, right out of the gate choice they made with the script was to not make her know her own fate. Like she didn't know she was a robot. And that is diabolical because the idea that if she was self-aware, she knew she was a robot and she was programmed to still follow her, you know, her parameters, then not that there'd be choice, I guess, but at least the knowledge of what you are. So I don't know what's more torturous, the knowledge of what you are or discovering later what you are. And of course, ultimately, this movie is about, um, kind of becoming your own person and becoming yourself, person in quotes, um, becoming self-aware, becoming self-actualized, and having, control over your life as opposed to someone else having control over your life. In a very literal sense here, but in a figurative sense, of course, as well. All of this wrapped up in a very entertaining package of a, you know, the one of the worst boyfriends in the world who not only is selfish, using her, caring about her not at all, but also literally using her to try to make money and to murder other people, which of course is the step that unravels everything from the beginning of this movie, where he has essentially set her up to murder the rich Russian dude who owns the house. And he does this, of course, by, they say at one point, very funny, they do the thing about, you jailbreaked your F-bot. I have to keep it nice because I think we're supposed to be not swearing. Even though this is probably mostly going to end up on Patreon, it might end up on YouTube. So I'll say the quote is something like that. You jailbroke your F-bot. And that's when you kind of get the feeling like everyone knows about these things. And that's why everyone doesn't like her kind of, or people treat her a little differently. And she acts a little different at the beginning. She acts kind of overly doting on him, and you're kind of wondering why she is so meek and mild-mannered. Well, she's basically been programmed to be that way. So that really leads into a lot of the fun and interesting subtexts in this movie. And directed by, I know it was written by a dude too, it was directed by a dude. I would love to see this exact same movie directed and written by a woman. I think this is actually pretty good and progressive to be done from the male's, point of view, I guess, in the sense of how it was written and directed. I think it'd be really interesting to see, you know, the a woman writing and directing this movie, and I think it would be even more insightful. I bet you would get even more into the psychology of Iris and what she is thinking and how she experiences her world and stuff. Even that being said, it does do some pretty interesting takedowns of especially kind of incel culture and the way that we might going forward, not we as I'm not part of incel culture, but I mean we as human beings might go forward to utilize and use this AI and robot technology, or what do you want to call it. A few little jabs in here that were pretty great. The moment when Iris breaks out, she gets the phone from Josh, and she's out in the woods trying to escape from them because now she figures she knows she's been used, but she still is unable to break her programming. She can't really do violence against people unless she's allowed to, which he had upped her violence content a little bit to make her able to do the killing. But she can't lie. She really can't disobey him in a lot of ways. But now that she has his phone, she has the app that controls herself, which is her first moment of self-actualization, of having her own destiny in her own hands, literally. And she starts to go through all of her settings, and that's such a great moment. The idea that like if a man, especially this kind of dude, could control his girlfriend's settings, what would he set her at? And the all the weird implications there that are done in a really lighthearted way here, but have really dark undertones. The fact that he could set her to be even lower intelligence than she is in this movie. Iris discovers she's only 40% intelligence, and her response is something to the fact like, "Oh, Josh," like disappointment and also realization, like, "Oh, that's all you thought of me," or maybe the realization is like, "Oh, you couldn't handle me being smarter than 40%. You needed a girlfriend that was only 40%, or you would feel inferior because maybe you're kind of not too smart either yourself, dude. And you kind of wonder, like, well, how did he dial that in? Like, did he did he experiment? Did he start at 70% and was like, oh boy, she's too smart for me. I need to keep going down. Like, how did he figure out just the right level of dumbness for him as a perfect mate? And the fact that you could go down to zero, like, what is the person who does that? Or 5% or 10%? Like, what does that look like? Um, that's one of the real dark kind of like implications that is just kind of thrown in there. It's not necessary for you to really dwell on it, but if you want to dwell on it, if you want to kind of dig deeper in some of the aspects of this movie, little things like that are awesome touches that I think is what gives this movie some real life and real longevity. Another moment that's like that is he's got her and he's finally got her back under his control and at towards the end of the movie, and he basically not only tortures her by having her burn her hand, which is shown in the trailers, which is too bad because that is an amazing moment. Because at that point, you are so invested in her character and in her plight to see that he's got her in control again, and to see how cruel he is and how he's willing to put her through that pain, knowing that as a non-human, she will keep her hand there even through that pain, which she is apparently feeling is a fantastic visual and thematic moment to show in a trailer. It's really terrible. Anyway, whatever. I would have done a trailer very differently, but that is me as me. Uh, but in that moment, then he has her pick up the gun and shoot herself in the head, kill herself, and he's going to be done with her. And to discover when the technicians show up to basically take her away and repair her or whatever, to discover that, oh, he discovers a double thing. Here it is. First of all, he discovers he messed up because he thought he was going to destroy any chance that they would have any record of what he had done, because that was his whole point. That was the whole reason he needed to destroy her, right? Is that if the technicians that own her discover what he's been up to and that he's doing this scheme and this murder and that he altered her, obviously he's going to be in big trouble and he won't be able to get away with his plot. But you also discover, oh, all of the important bits aren't in her head. There is really officially no brain. There's like Wi-Fi. I think it's a Wi-Fi and some other connectivity stuff there, but all of the important memory and CPUs or whatever they is that she has are in the body. So once again, I thought that was really a really sly and interesting, like kind of a sub commentary. Once again, on this kind of misogynistic culture is like, oh well, the brain on this F-bot doesn't really matter. We don't care about the brain. We're not going to put anything important in the head. That head's just a pretty thing, right? All the important stuff's in the body. That's what we really care about. So once again, an interesting little tidbit there. Um, Another piece that is really interesting is there is some indications on the outside world. And this is a good example. When you have a smaller budget or you're making a smaller version of a sci-fi film, which essentially this is a sci-fi film, right? Or slightly futuristic. Um, it's really smart to do things that indicate the larger world and make the audience curious about the larger world without fully revealing the larger world or trying to tackle it. You don't need to do that. Let us believe it's out there and be enticed by that and make us want to know more about it. Not that I want to have a million sequels to this, and I'm sure they'll all be terrible, but the idea that it it indicates a richer world just gives you so much more to grab onto, I think, to a movie like this. It could be just a throwaway. And the moments like that are when the technicians are talking and they're saying, like, well, he wasn't too bad to her, really, because I mean, some of these guys, they just use him for target practice or they chain him up in a basement and torture them. And the fact that, like, wow, that is not unbelievable. That is probably true. Because imagine people who have, I don't know, serial killer tendencies. And now you have this AI creation that is not human, doesn't have rights, and they can just act out whatever they always wanted to act out on humans, they're going to act them out on these unaware, unself-aware, thinking they're actually a living person robot. That's pretty horrible to think about. And little stuff like that they just throw in as just the reality of the world. And these, kind of the idea that these robot technician dudes, they've seen it all. They've seen what people can do. They've seen the darkness, and that rings, unfortunately, very true. So that's just a few of the um, spoiler pieces I thought were interesting in this movie. There's a lot of other stuff, a lot of um, a smart relationship and smart human behavior stuff in this movie that, like I said, didn't have to be there, but they have it, and it just enriches what's already a super fun kind of essentially an adventurous sci-fi action horror thriller kind of a thing. And you can totally enjoy it just on that level, but if you want to dig into all these other levels, you can. I especially think that people will have fun in time. I don't know. I feel like some iconic stuff's going to come out of here. I think there's going to be some really, um, I can imagine some really interesting artwork people create. I can imagine some really interesting fiction people come up with as far as like side stories. I mean, it even leaves it almost a superhero level ending here where, she's going off with her Terminator like, stripped off robot arm. What is she going to do? What is she going to do in the world? I mean, they're going to most likely decommission her or destroy her as quick as they can when they find out they've got this rogue murderous bot running around. But the idea that she can go out there and, I don't know, create the F-bot uprising, I don't know. It just is kind of a neat, like open-ended way to end the movie. All right. Well, that is my spoiler section on Companion. I'd be curious to hear what y'all have to think about it, what you thought about it, if you liked it, or if you thought it was terrible, why do you think it was terrible? Or if you thought it was great and I didn't quite get how great it was, I'll like to hear about that too. But overall, I think this is going to live on as a pretty cool movie for the early part of 2025, and not just a little bit prescient, a little bit timely, and a little bit maybe ahead of its time. We shall see.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. For more movie and television reviews and interviews, please subscribe to my Deepest Dream channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And as always, thanks so much for your support. Take care.